parasite that was a flagellate and it was causing an infection in small intestine. That was Giardia. We discussed a ciliate, Balantidium coli, that was causing infection in the large intestine. And that was very much prominent among those communities which are animal handlers. And then we discussed Entamoeba histolytica that was causing infection in large intestine, causing amoebic dysentery. And once again, as far as the GI tract parasites are concerned, this Entamoeba histolytica is the major protozoan parasite that causes mortality up to 50,000 people per year. And today we're going to discuss Cryptosporidium parvum. It's an epicomplexan parasite, very small in size, about 3 to 5 micrometer in length. So normally, as this parasite is an intracellular parasite, so almost all the parasites that are members of phylum Epicomplexa, they are intracellular parasites. So that they enter into the host cell. As they are required to enter into the host cell, so they have apical complex on their surface. And that apical complex facilitates these parasites to penetrate into the host cell. So from epicomplexa, whether it's malarial parasite, that is a blood parasite, and whether they are other parasites, what you will going to find that all the epicomplexan parasites, they are intracellular parasites. As they are all intracellular, they all will be very small in size. So today we're going to discuss a parasite that do not have any specific locomotory organ, but still it manages to cause infection in the small intestine. As far as the distribution of Cryptosporidium parvum is concerned, this is cosmopolitan in nature. What do I mean by the cosmopolitan is that it is distributed worldwide. And here there is some data that suggests that as far as the developed countries are concerned, about 4.9%, very close to 5% of the population is positive for Cryptosporidium. And the situation is, as far as in underdeveloped countries or developing countries, we see more infection, very common reason due to poor hygienic conditions. Although this parasite has a huge prevalence, 4.9% in developed countries, and previous data suggests us, and about 7.9 or 8% in underdeveloped countries. Huge prevalence. But that this parasite is not an issue for all those people who are immunocompetent. Your body manages to heal from that infection, manages to eradicate that infection without any external input. So this parasite is not significant when it comes to the immunocompetent people. Where this parasite very significant, very much important, it leads to very much high rate of mortality are the AIDS patient, are all those people who are immunocompromised. As immunocompromised people fail to develop any immunity, they fail to eradicate that parasite. So lots and lots of AIDS patients, they die because of this parasite, Cryptosporidium. And the mortality, the death rate, as it is very difficult, it's very much challenging to treat Cryptosporidium parvum in AIDS patient. And the people, they die due to diarrhea and dehydration. So it causes very severe infection in AIDS patient or immunocompromised people. So here you can see these disaster percentages that it causes about 80% mortality. That's a huge percentage. So this parasite is very much significant when it comes to AIDS patient. As far as the life cycle of this parasite is concerned, once again, it has a direct life cycle. What do I mean by the direct life cycle? That it does not involve any intermediate host. You will not going to see any vector. You will not going to see any intermediate host. Rather, what happens that certain stages of the parasites, they come out, and eventually in the environment they will going to grow, they will going to mature, and eventually through contaminated food and through contaminated water, the person once again, another person or the same person can capture the infection. So there is no involvement of the intermediate host, direct life cycle. So what's the sources of infection? Contaminated food and contaminated water. As far as the hosts are concerned, I mean, Cryptosporidium uses a range of hosts. It manages to cause infection in human. It manages to cause infection in livestock as well. So the cattle, they are the major reservoir host for Cryptosporidium infection. Like other epicomplexan parasites, the Cryptosporidium has a very, very much complex life cycle. Previously, whatever we have discussed, you just need to remember. I mean, we discussed Entomoeba histolytica. There was no sexual reproduction in Entomoeba histolytica. We discussed Giardia. There was no concept of sexual reproduction in Giardia lambelia. When it comes to the Balantidium coli, there was no concept of sexual reproduction in Balantidium coli. But here with epicomplexan parasite, you will going to see sexual reproduction as well as the asexual reproduction. Because of sexual reproduction and asexual reproduction, you will going to see a little bit complicated life cycle. Maybe on your screen, you can see a word autoinfection. What does this mean by autoinfection? Any volunteer who wants to answer this question? What is an autoinfection? I will give you 15 seconds to respond, and then I will go into my explanation. Any volunteer? Just fast. Okay, you are not interested. You are sleeping. Good morning. So autoinfection refers to mean just try to memorize the life cycles which we previously discussed. That at any stage, what will going to happen that when they have asexual reproduction, and then eventually you will have the cyst form, and the cyst, they were required to come out into the environment to mature. So though all those parasites which they took the form of a cyst, they must need to come out of host, and then they need to mature in the environment. And once those cysts they mature in the environment, what will going to happen that then they may manage to infect either a new host or the same host. There is a possibility through contaminated food and water. So even if it is the same host, it's like a new infection. So at any time when they will going to have the cyst form, the cyst will come out and it will going to infect a new person. Autoinfection means that the cyst, they sporulate within the body of the host. They do not come out. As they do not come out, so they sporulate within the host. So they differentiate into the sporozoites, and eventually they manages to cause infection within the same host. So those is they are not required to come out. That's an autoinfection. And this autoinfection is responsible for huge increase in number of parasites inside the body of host. So what's different as far as the life cycle of an apicomplexan parasite, that is the Cryptosporidium, and all those other parasites which we discussed that were infecting the GI tract was concerned. One very prominent thing, that Cryptosporidium is an intracellular parasite. So just assume I am trying to write intracellular here. So it's an intracellular parasite. I'm not good with this mouse. Secondly, you will not going to see any sexual reproduction. So this is the first parasite where you see a sexual reproduction. That's the second difference. So here you will going to see in the life cycle microgametes and the macrogametes, and they will going to fuse to form the zygote, and zygote later on it will develop a wall around it and it will become a oocyst. So previously in the life cycle of all previous parasites, there was only asexual reproduction. Here we have both sexual and asexual cycle. Third, previously we haven't discussed anything regarding the autoinfection. So this is one category where you will going to see the autoinfection. So that's the unique way of writing the word auto. So that's the third difference. So let's discuss the life cycle. What's the infective stage of this parasite? Is the sporozoites. So sporozoite is the infective stage. That is a fancy way of writing infective. So sporozoites are the infective stage. So a person captures the infection at the stage of sporozoites. The sporozoite, they manages to sorry, I'm wrong. So a person captures the infection in the form of oocyst, and oocysts have a thick wall around it, and in the small intestine, what will going to happen that this oocyst will going to the wall around the oocyst will be disrupted by the enzymes of the small intestine, and the sporozoites, they will going to emerge. So the infective stage, accept my apologies, it's the oocysts are the infective stage of these parasites. So a person captures the infection at the stage of oocyst. So along with food and water, the person takes in the oocysts that are thick walled. So it reaches to the stomach, it manages to escape from the stomach, and once it reaches to the small intestine, the cyst wall around the oocyst, it will burst, and eventually what will going to happen that you will have the emergence of the sporozoites. The sporozoites, which emerge in the lumen of the small intestine by the excision of the oocyst, what will going to happen that these sporozoites, they will going to penetrate the epithelial cells of the small intestine. And here you can see that in oocyst, it starts penetrating an epithelial cell, and eventually it got internalized. That's why we name it as the intracellular parasite. So in the small intestine, there will be an excision of oocyst, and from the oocysts, the sporozoites, they will emerge. The sporozoites, they will going to penetrate the intestinal epithelial cells, and eventually, immediately they got internalized. So once they got internalized in an epithelial cell, this is an epithelial cell of the small intestine. And here you can see all those villi and microvilli. So what's going to happen that it will be rounded in shape, and now we name it as the trophozoite, the main feeding form of a parasite. This trophozoite will going to feed and undergo asexual reproduction. And it got converted into the type 1 meron. And later on, from type 1 mirant, many merozoites, they will going to emerge. As this type 1 mirant increase in size, eventually what will going to happen, that the host cell or the epithelial cell will going to burst, and it releases lots and lots of merozoites. These merozoites, they will going to penetrate another epithelial cell. And then they will going to once again undergo asexual reproduction, and that's the asexual cycle. So they will going to produce more and more merozoites, and more host cell, they got burst. So during the life cycle, some of those merozoites, they will differentiate into the microgametes and the macrogametes. So these microgametes and macrogametes, they will going to fuse to form the zygote. So that zygote is now goes to the lumen of the small intestine, and in the lumen of small intestine, either it will going to develop a thick wall around it or a thin wall around it. So if it develop a thin wall, whether it's develop thick wall or thin wall, we name it as the oocyst. It does not make any difference. So when a zygote develop a wall around it, we name it as the oocyst. So if the wall around the zygote is thin, so we name it as the thin wall oocyst. And sometimes a thick wall is being developed, so we name them as the thick wall oocyst. So the thick wall oocyst, they will going to leave the host, and these thick wall oocysts, they will going to leave the host along with the feces. So along with the stools, they will going to leave the host. So once they leave the host, these oocysts, they will going to mature, and through contaminated food and contaminated water, if those oocysts, they are being ingested by another person, what will going to happen, that these oocysts, they got engulfed, they reaches to the stomach, they manages to escape from the acids of stomach due to the presence of wall around them, and in the small intestine there will be an excitation, and the sporozoites, they will emerge. The sporozoites will going to penetrate the host cell, and it will be converted into the trophozoites. The trophozoites undergo asexual reproduction. So eventually from a trophozoites, you will have many merozoites, and these merozoites, they will going to undergo asexual reproduction. So eventually you will have more and more host cell, they got burst, and increased number of merozoites. And some of those merozoites, they will differentiate into the microgametes and the macrogametes. And both micro and macrogametes, they will going to fuse in the lumen of small intestine to form the zygote. The zygote will going to develop a wall around it. And once it develop a wall around it, we name it as the oocyst. Oocyst exists in two forms. If the wall of oocyst is thin wall, we name it as the thin wall oocyst. And thin wall oocyst normally sporulate, or they converted into the sporozoites within the lumen of small intestine. They never leave the host. So that causes an auto-infection. But thick wall oocysts, they will going to leave the host in the environment through contaminated food and water. If they manages to find another host or the same host, so oocyst along with the contaminated food and water, it manages to reaches to the stomach. In the stomach, it escapes the acids of stomach, and then eventually what will happen, and this is the way its life cycle continues. So as far as the infective stage is concerned, the infective stage is the oocyst, the stage in which a person captures the infection. As far as the diagnostic stage is concerned, once again, the diagnostic stage is also the oocyst. So two important things. How we diagnose cryptosporidium is the presence of oocyst in the stools or the feces. So both the diagnostic and the infective stage in the life cycle of this parasite, they are oocyst. So that's how do you have any question regarding the life cycle of this parasite? Just feel comfortable and ask. And that's the series C. And if you look here, as far as the oocyst is concerned, you can see this microscope as well. Microscope refers to the diagnostic stage, and the infective stage is represented by this symbol. So you can see that the oocyst, the thick wall oocyst, they are both the diagnostic stage as well as the infective stage. And as I was thinking about the malaria, I thought that sporozoites, they are the infective stage, as the vector injects the sporozoites into the body of host. Accept my apologies, that was my mistake. Do you have any question regarding this? Is everything clear with respect to this parasite life cycle? So first thing, what happens that if your immune system do not control this parasite, it will going to destroy the host epithelial cell. So these epithelial cells, that lines the small intestine, they perform a very vital function, that they carry out the absorption of nutrients. So the function of the small intestine got compromised. As the function of small intestine got compromised, so what will going to happen that these parasites, they causes diarrhea. So the first sign. So it causes diarrhea. Diarrhea because it leads to the destruction of the cell of the small intestine. So the normal functioning of the small intestinal cells, they got compromised. So that will going to lead to the diarrhea. That's the first thing. So second, as the functioning got compromised, that leads to the abdominal cramp. Normally, with any intracellular parasite, you see the fever, and that's the last function, that is the dehydration. For normal immunocompetent person, your immune system manages to control that parasite. So it's self-limiting. You do not need to treat cryptosporidium in immunocompetent people. Maybe they will have diarrhea for maybe 1 or 2 days, and eventually the person recovers without any external input of any medicine. But as far as the immunocompromised people are concerned, it causes very severe acute and chronic diarrhea for months. And as it interferes with the absorption of the nutrients, so that leads to the malabsorption. Malabsorption is as they fail to absorb the nutrients. So another term for it is the wasting syndrome in AIDS patients. Diagnosis, either you diagnose oocyst in stool, or you detect antibodies through ELISA and PCR. Transmission is always mean as that this parasite has a lot to do with hygienic condition. So it's the fecal oral route. The oocysts, they are released along with the feces, and the oocysts, they manages to get entry through the mouth. So it's the fecal oral route. Reservoir host, human, cattle, and other domestic animals. Contaminated food and water, either they are being contaminated by human feces or livestock feces, does not make any difference. So they contaminated food and water, that's the source of transmission. Normally, there is no, the immunocompetent people, they rather do not need any therapy. But in case of immunocompromised people, generally people offer them with the sportive therapy like dehydration and the replacement of all those nutrients. And that concludes my discussion. on this parasite. Do you have any question regarding this?
Sir, auto infection का दोबारा बता दें please.
Normally what happens that, for example, when parasite develops a wall around it, we name it as the oocyst. We have a word oocyst specifically when zygote develop a wall around it. So in order to have oocyst, the requirement is that there must be fusion of male and female gametes, and they end up in forming zygote. And once that zygote is being formed, it will going to develop a wall around it, and we name it as oocyst. Previously, in previous infection, we used the word like cyst. Cyst is nothing else, but it's also a wall, but that wall is developed around a trophozoite. So when cyst was formed in previous all those parasites, the first requirement was that the cysts they were required to go out of the host for maturation, and those cysts they mature in the environment. So it was compulsion for the cysts that they need to exit the host, and they need to, that's maturation. So in the environment, they will going to mature, and they are one very prominent thing that in order to cause infection, those cysts, it's compulsion for them to exit the host. I'm just trying to write something. Exit the host. In this case, you have two types of cysts. One are the thick wall and other one are thin wall. The thick wall cyst, it's a compulsion for them to leave the host. But as far as the thin wall are concerned, it's not a compulsion for them. The thin wall, there is an excitation even in the lumen of the small intestine. It's the same lumen where you have the formation of oocyst. So initially the thin wall was developed around the zygote, so we name it as the thin wall oocyst, and there was an excitation in the small intestine without just leaving the host. So the oocyst, they never left the host. And once there will be an excitation, there will be a release of sporozoites, and those sporozoites, they manages to enter into the epithelial cells, and it manages to cause infection as well. So that excitation within the same host increases the intensity of infection. So it's an auto-infection. It's infection again caused within the same host, because sporozoites, they never leave the host. And here it is mentioned that thin wall oocysts, they are being formed in the small intestine, and even staying within the same small intestine, same section, there is an excitation. And the sporozoites, they emerge, and those sporozoites, they manages to penetrate the epithelial cells. Do you have any other question? Just feel free and ask.
No sir, thank you sir.
Do you have any question regarding this?
सर चैट सेक्शन में क्वेश्चन है उनके आंसर दे दें.
Okay. Let me check all those questions. Okay. Sir, what is meant by the diagnostic character? Are these only related to the diseases diagnosis caused by some parasites? Or the morphological character can be considered as diagnostic stage? diagnostic stage is nothing else but which stage you manage, you diagnose an infection in which stage. So if I'm required to diagnose Cryptosporidium infection, how I can diagnose it conventionally? The only way to diagnose a Cryptosporidium infection, only way to confirm a Cryptosporidium infection is to observe the parasite under the microscope. Although there are other strategies as well, ELISA and PCR, that are something else. I'm going with the conventional, what is in practice when it comes to the normal labs. So they suspect infection on the basis of signs and symptoms, and eventually for confirmation, they take fecal samples. And in the fecal sample, what they look for? The presence of oocyst confirms the infection. The presence of cyst in case of Entamoeba histolytica, the cyst that is characteristic of Entamoeba histolytica. The presence of cyst of Giardia that are characteristic of Giardia cyst, that confirms the infection. Giardia cyst, they appear like half moon. So which stage you are able to see when you are diagnosing an infection? That's the word for diagnosis. So normally in the fecal sample, as we see thick wall oocyst, so that's the diagnostic stage. And although we look for the cyst shape, size, if we need to confirm that infection. So every parasite has its own characteristic shape of a cyst. So as far as the protozoan parasites are concerned that are GI tract, so normally we have the diagnostic stage as cyst. So when we use the word diagnostic stage, mean which stage you manages to see the parasite. So that concludes my, is it clear, roll number 48?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then, sir, also in case of Giardia lamblia, why IG is not mentioned, as it is more specific for the parasite? When I was discussing the immunology, I told you that IgE is very, very much effective when it comes to the worm parasite and the allergic responses. So what do I mean by the worm parasite, like Fasciola hepatica, Schistosoma, like Chinese liver fluke? So these are all worm parasites. So you have IgE response in case of worm parasite, not against the protozoan parasites. Is it clear? Roll number, who is that roll number? Roll number 48.
Same
Is
roll.
it clear?
Yes, sir.
Just feel free and ask.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, there is roll number 5. सर मुझे कोई रिमूव कर रहा है मीटिंग से.